Hello everyone, welcome back to Suited for Gaming. Today we'll be looking at Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain on the PC.
Welcome home.
The Metal Gear Solid games have been trailblazers when it came to the art of conveying message to an audience while disguised under clever and exceptional gameplay design. A series that has held the attention of many players from the moment a snake swam out of a submerged capsule and made his way into our lives. Now, the series, having held relevancy over the span of 17 years with a story stretching far beyond that time frame, has supposedly culminated in the recently released Phantom Pain. And true to fashion, like many of its predecessors, the game was released to unwavering critical acclaim from a vast majority of media outlets. I, however, as a small reviewer, am lucky enough to take my sweet time with the game since I'm not competing to be the first one out the door. So 95 hours in and only 8 missions shy from completing the main game before losing my save to an unfortunate bug, I feel equipped and ready to share my opinion about the game as usual, starting with gameplay and mechanics.
Analysis complete.
It's over 9,000!
Now, everyone wants to dip their hands in that jar of open world goodness because if you're not open world, then clearly you're doing it wrong, right? Wrong. Hideo Kojima, the face of faces behind the Metal Gear Solid franchise, decided to jump on the bandwagon and make the latest iteration of the game fully open world. As a result, Metal Gear Solid 5, to its detriment, plays unlike any other MGS games out there and adopts the mundane tactics implemented by most open world games. Repetition. Now, if I had to sum up the entirety of the gameplay in 2 words, it would be Extraction Simulator.
Took you so long. We'll talk, but not here.
mission arrived at Mother Base.
You've secured the target. I'll send the chopper to get you out. Make your way to the RV. You can check the location on your iDroid.
Mission info has been updated.
You look well.
Now, to clarify on that point, let me paint a picture for you. You get a mission which 98% of the time involves you infiltrating a base to in turn rescue and extract someone or something from that base. You call your chopper, it arrives in about 10 to 15 seconds. You jump on the chopper and sit on the bay viewing the vast expanse of the open world for another 10 to 15 seconds before Snake will actually get into the chopper. You then pull up your iDroid and proceed to accept the mission. You then have to select a specific spot you want the chopper to drop you. Then you select your loadout equipment, and when you're done, the chopper will drop you where you requested. It will take another 10 to 15 seconds to do that. Now, if you're looking to run and gun your way through the missions, then most of the time you can elect for the chopper to drop you off directly in the base. But for the 80 to 90% of you who are planning to stealth your way through the missions, if you're lucky, it will probably take you 5 to 6 minutes of sprinting around an extremely empty world to get to that base. And once you get to your target, you can then extract them by chopper, by full-ton, by car, on horseback, on your back, and if you're feeling creative, you can do some sort of combination of these options. And once you're done, you can do it again and again and again and again until you're done with the game. And if you're chugging along expecting for variety in the mission types, don't. For the vast majority of the game, it'll be the exact same mission in different bases, and sometimes you'll be revisiting the same bases as well. They're all the same. Even the side missions play exactly like the main missions. This is beyond bad and bordering on the hilarious, especially since the initiation and conclusion of each mission is followed by a prideful display of credits. With all those names popping up after each mission, it's downright embarrassing to see that they couldn't come up with anything more than infiltrating and extracting. I know it sounds bad, but don't let that get you down, because despite the repetition, it's easily the best game in the series when it comes to gameplay. Because once you get through all the filler nonsense and actually infiltrate a base, you start to realize the amount of complexity and effort that went into the gameplay design. The gunplay is absolutely stellar. Each gun you use feels different and unique. Most impressively, they're very well balanced. The larger rifles rarely have a suppressor available, so using them will attract a large group of enemies. But in turn, they can mow down waves of enemies. Whereas the smaller guns have longer reload times, so you'll want to make sure every shot counts. Each type of weapon complements a specific playstyle, and you'll often find yourself adjusting your strategy and approach depending on the weapon you switch to. The game also encourages and rewards players who think outside the box or plan ahead. For example, if you run out of ammo and you want to take out a specific enemy without alerting anyone to yourself, you can request for an ammo or weapon drop at an enemy's exact coordinates. The item will drop on their head and knock them out.
Supplies requested. Supply drop complete.
You can also set C4 explosives on the ground, and if you accidentally draw attention to yourself during one of your stealth runs, you can set them off and the enemies will automatically stop looking for you and start heading towards the explosion to investigate. If anything, that actually speaks more about the artificial intelligence in the game than it does about your strategy. The enemies have some of the best AI I have seen in a game, and they adapt to your strategies very well, which in turn encourages you to adapt to their adaptation. For example, if you like to CQC or run head-on into enemies, you'll start to see them deploying more and more decoys in their bases to try and trick you into attacking them. If you're a sniper who likes to deal headshots from a safe distance, word will go around and the enemies will start wearing helmets. If you like to hold up enemies from behind, they start carrying concealed blades that they can use to stab you with as you go to grab them. Their strategies are well coordinated, and listening to them reporting suspicious activities and awaiting instructions on how to proceed never gets old. Now, putting the enemy AI aside for a second, the friendly artificial intelligence is also commendable. Metal Gear Solid 5 introduces a buddy system that allows you to go into battle with a companion. Now, the options of using them are very limited, but as you gradually continue to use them, their skill sets and abilities increase. They do a great job of staying out of your way and usually mirror your playstyle unless you command them otherwise. You don't necessarily have to use them at all, but taking them into missions with you adds more possibilities to your options. Finally, another major addition to the game is your mother base. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, no, we had a mother base in Peace Walker. And you're right, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker did indeed feature the mother base, but this time around, mother base is an actual area that you can visit to see and experience the fruits of your labor. And I can think of no better word to describe it. It is very labor intensive, and this is where the vast majority of your time will be spent. Now, for those people who are wondering what Mother Base is at this point, it's essentially a hub or a plant that you build in the ocean off the coast of Eastern Africa, and it comprises of different structures like base development sites, medical areas, combat intel, research and development, and field support platforms. You'll have to develop it over time in order to expand a mercenary unit named Diamond Dogs, and each merc will have a skill set that's suited best to a specific platform. By expanding the base, you'll have the option to order the development of items or weapons that you can take with you into battle. But here's the catch. Doing all of this requires an in-game currency system called GMP. You'll earn GMP as you complete missions, however, extracting minerals, mercenaries, weapons, animals, and vehicles to your mother base all cost GMP. By the time you level up your base enough to unlock the weapon or gear you want to use, building that item will require additional GMP. The better the item, the higher the cost, and the longer the time it takes to develop it. Expanding the base could take up to 3 hours in some cases, and building items on higher levels could take 30 minutes at a time. And I'm not talking about in-game time, I'm actually talking about real time. Mother Base simply exists as a huge time sink. Its only purpose is to take what would have been a 15 to 20 hour long campaign and stretch it over the course of 100 hours. Now, the area itself would not have been so bad if it were lively, but in actuality it's about as dead as a doornail. While you know you have hundreds of soldiers on paper, the platforms typically hold a handful of soldiers, making the act of visiting it another chore on the list of things to do. Now, some people have said there's no need to waste time on the mother base if you don't want to, but that is highly incorrect. You see, if you neglect to build up the mother base, you'll reach specific areas in the game where you'll regret it, because progressing past those missions will be near impossible without some specific weapons. And finally, from a technical perspective, this problem right here, this issue, I don't know what the deal is with this open world games that make traversal an absolute pain, but this stuff needs to stop.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
So I think we've established that, from a gameplay perspective, there's no denying that this is the most enjoyable MGS game, with the exception of the grinding, of course. However, the vast majority of us who've been in this since 1998, or even earlier for some of you, we're all here mostly because of the story elements. So does the Phantom Pain deliver? Well, the answer to your question is... See, the game picks up where we left off in Ground Zeroes with Snake waking up in a hospital and attempting to gain control of his faculties. You'll have to help him through his journey as he comes to grips with the events that transpired. This prologue is the highest point of the entire game, and it lives up to what most fans love dearly about the franchise. But as the story progresses past the introductory phase, the storytelling cuts down to a minimum. You're left only with a base understanding of the main villain you'll be working towards hunting down. Anything else you uncover from that point will be through the use of audio cassette tapes. As you complete more missions, you'll receive more and more tapes that you can listen to, and they slowly begin to unfold the story. The cutscenes we've grown to love have been cut down to a minimum. In the previous titles, the stories and the cutscenes made us feel like we were witnessing events unfolding and that we were taking a journey with the characters. But with a change as drastic as this, it completely made me feel alienated from the story, and it took away from the visually expressive crazy scenes that only MGS could provide. It does attempt to throw in some humor here and there through the tapes, but it usually falls flat on its face. The writing falls victim to the same problems as well. When the motive of the main villain is exposed, it felt so silly and mundane that I was expecting them to reveal it was a joke. But no, the writers just went with it to the end. If you thought nano machines were bad, wait until you hear this one. While the main story itself left a lot to be desired, it was the little things that kept me going. Overhearing the mercenaries in my base gossiping about past events that occurred in the series and throwing in crazy theories concocted by the Metal Gear community was a joy. Sneaking around an enemy base and hearing soldiers talking about some strange things that happened to their unit and knowing I was responsible for those things was great. It was even greater to listen to them talk about things that happened to them that I had no involvement in. And then later run into something that made me go, aha, so that's what they were talking about. The game also goes out of its way to close some plot holes that plagued the previous games. And while it did manage to do that, it ended up leaving more questions than it answered. I won't go into details on the plot holes since this is not a spoiler review, but a quick search on the internet will reveal what they are. The boards are filled with them. So, to go back to the initial question, does the Phantom Pain deliver when it comes to the writing or storytelling or plot? Unfortunately not. In my opinion, it's easily the worst in the series as far as writing or plot is concerned.
This pain is ours, and no one else's. The secret weapon we wield, out of sight. We will be stronger than ever. For our peace. Sahelanthropus will unleash that thirst unto the future. Those were his last words.
Cause.
Pretentious to the end. Still. Doesn't feel like this is over. And I'll never be whole again.
The audio is a prevalent theme throughout the entire series as there's more emphasis on storytelling through audio cassettes. There's also importance placed on journeying to specific sections of two different continents, which results in exposure to national and tribal languages. I really enjoyed the latter because I could tell that there was a large amount of work put into it. Normally, in games that strive to implement different languages, there are huge discrepancies and inconsistencies. Resident Evil 5, for example, seems to be set in a fictional South African city where the Majini speak Kiswahili, which is, for all intensive purposes, not a South African language. And it sounded like they were reading it directly from a Google Translate machine with how the sentence structures were completely incorrect. Now, I can't speak for all the languages featured in the Phantom Pain, but on the few I could make out, you can tell that they really did their homework. Not only are the original languages correct, but the inflections and phonetic approach is very convincing. And where you find people speaking a language not native to that region, there's a very plausible in-game explanation for it. Now, while on this topic, as a fair warning, an issue that most returning players might struggle to cope with is Snake's voice actor. We no longer have David Hayter at the helm, but instead we have Kiefer Sutherland. He had some pretty big shoes to fill, but he delivered as a great voice actor. When he had a line, that is. See, the problem is that Snake's dialogue has been drastically reduced, and when you're listening to audio cassettes of him holding a conversation with someone, it will probably take you a minute or two to realize that it's Snake's line.
people suffered so much at the hands of America. And you asked for hamburgers.
You were hospitalized in Dekelia, a British sovereign base area on Cyprus. It's part of British overseas territory that falls outside of Cypriot jurisdiction. You got moved from Cuba's Little America right into Cyprus's Little Britain.
Why Dekelia?
The UK and the US remain close allies. The last place Cypher would think to look for you is inside their own system. That's what kept you safe in British military hospital for 9 years. The safest place from a whale is inside its own belly. You were a regular Geppetto.
Well, it wasn't Pinocchio who led me out to safety.
Switching a voice actor this late into the series and minimizing cutscenes in favor of audio logs or cassettes didn't really work favorably. Now, aside from that, the sound effects were also well done. From the sound of sniper rifles, machine gun fire, mortars whizzing your direction, or even the sound of helicopter blades slicing violently through the air. It's a battlefield out there, and it certainly sounds the part. This game is visually impressive, and it knows it. True to form, you'll have control of a zoom-in feature that we've come to expect from the series, which will allow you to magnify and examine the intricacies of the character models and the environmental designs. So if you're a person who likes to look for Easter eggs or subliminal messages or images in the background, you can go crazy on this stuff. We also have a day and night cycle and dynamic weather effects in the game that range from sandstorms to heavy downpours and blinding fogs. Not only are they visually impressive from an aesthetic and technical aspect, but they also play a pivotal role in how you approach the mission. What deserves the most attention, however, is the cinematography. The camera and animation work in unison to provide a seamless transition between gameplay and cutscenes. Although they have been drastically reduced, what little they do show is always a sight to behold. While it's visually impressive, there are a few things that affected my immersion. For example, when entering a building at night and looking out the window, there seems to be a bug. I don't know if it's a bug or a design choice, but everything is lit up like it were daytime again. Exiting the building, however, will revert it back to the night cycle. Another issue is the overuse of the lens flares. While the lighting in the game is well done, the lens flares are too in your face. The flares stretch from one end of the screen to the other, which is absolutely annoying, especially if you game on widescreen or ultra-widescreen displays. And the random ones that pop up for no rhyme or reason are even worse. I can see them implementing the flares as a visual cue, but using it at this level of extremity is way over the top.
Confirm. One bogey on our 6. Steady at 0.4 miles. It's tailing us.
Don't lead it back to Mother Base.
Roger. We'll shake it off.
Now this review probably lasted longer than I or you would have liked, but there are so many other aspects I still want to touch on, like the lack of interesting boss battles or the lack of a manual save feature that has caused a lot of people to lose their saves, or forcing people to play through recycled levels with higher difficulties, or cutting out content, but I feel like I focused on the major stuff and cleverly snaked in the other issues in this section. So I'm content with having looked at some of the good and the bad elements of what the game has to offer in the main 4 categories, And the important question in the end still remains. Is it worth getting? I'll give two different answers because I know there's going to be two different people out there. For the people who have never played a Metal Gear Solid game before, heck, even if you've played one or two of the games, and you're wondering if the hype is real and if it's worth the investment, the answer is a resounding no. The most you might get out of your $60 investment will probably be 8 to 12 hours of great gameplay before you get tired of the repetition and move on to something else. The series hit its high note with Metal Gear Solid 3, so if you haven't played that yet, consider picking up one of the collections instead and playing through it. If you feel like you want to move forward with the series, then work your way up to the Phantom Pain. Now, for those of you who, like me, have been longtime fans, the answer is yes. You'll enjoy the gameplay for a good 20 to 30% of the game, but after that point it's going to be the ambition of ending the story that'll keep you trucking along. The game will put a closure to some of the series' plot holes, but be warned, it will probably raise more questions than it will resolve. And whether you feel like you should get it at full price or wait until it's on sale, well, that just depends on how big of a fan you are. So if you've made it this far, I could kiss you. But for now, you'll just have to settle for me thanking you for watching. See you on the next one.